First, know your goal, then live it. To live free and unfettered, man must first discover his self. If he does not know his true self, how then can he live a life of truth as he performs the great work of bringing who he is in mind with what he is sacrificing himself to become? Until he comes to understand all parts of the self, he is a ship tossed by the waves of fear, confusion, and death. To discover one's true self is the first part of this work. To become it is the second. To sit on this voyage of discovery, we must work from silence to calm, to ecstasy and madness. The dizzying heights of knowing can only be reached by first running the wolf road, until at last we reach the path that leads to the mountain, to our ultimate goal. Welcome back, everyone. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame, Healing Arts, and Occult Science. In this segment, I'm going to work to get into a deeper knowing when it comes to the art and science of psychology. It is to note before I really start diving into this, that psychology and knowing your own psychology is an art and science. And after being on this path of self-discovery and self-actualized integration of how to navigate consciousness with what has been revealed to me, it has taken me into realms and worlds and universes of knowing that I'm going to be unpacking to share the rest of my existence. I'm truly inspired as I have been, yet this path work is extremely hardcore. And I'm currently coming out of a major purge that's been taking place for actually quite a while now. On a consistent basis, this path work forces me to face things within myself as I work to hold extreme patience in times that I would rather not have to deal with what I am alluding to here in full-on catharsis, which includes the continued observance of what is going on in the world around me, especially with those that choose to remain ignorant to anything. And the fact is, truth is absolutely fucking terrifying to behold once you actually come to know the difference. And those that know the difference know what I'm talking about here. Because once you truly see and experience this shit for real, you cannot ever unsee it. And there is no going back. And it's in these places that you need to forever stare fear in its face. And it's to also remind myself and all of you listening to recognize again and again how far things have come for those that have come onto the true magical path. Being truly grateful for this, and to know that we still have the opportunity to become better and better knowing the difference. And as I see into focus what needs to be consistently worked on and continue to manifest along this path of trial and hardship, know, again, that it will burn to ash everything that is standing in the way of what is meant on the path of mastery. And we need to forever keep reaching beyond what is being burned the fuck out. My soul on its own accord seeks challenge to grow. And as I dig my roots even deeper, stretching past the poisoned soil of indifference and the incompetence of the willful ignorance of those around me, to drink from that fertile ground within the core essence is the reason to reach. And as to cultivate a continued daily practice, this must be lived for all of you that are being held accountable to this. Too many people feign and are pretentious as fuck that even claim to know the truth, let alone say they live according to it. I have neither time or any business with bullshit in my life whatsoever. And you need to not as well. And to what continues to unfold, that which is deep within the seat of vision, holding focus to this exactly where you are from moment to moment is how we remember the lesson of holding patience in wisdom through the course of trial and forging. Destroying that eternal enemy, self-sabotage, that wants to pull us into the idea that things are not happening at all or that things are not happening fast enough. Wisdom knows that true magic takes time, and it's the knowledge of this that is necessary to hold steady your course and action, focus, and execution towards that vision each and every fucking day. And if you continue to do so, you will steer clear from the currents of self-sabotage and come into the place of wielding your magic effectively, let alone being in the position to create a better world and better existence. So diving into this now, I want to quote Sun Tzu from Via The Art of War. It states that most of us have two lives, the life that we live and the unlived life within us. And between the two stands resistance. At a certain and very specific time in life, you will hear the call of what some would say is the higher self. This, though, means something completely different in the age of deception that most are still caught in when it comes to certain teaching to what the higher self actually is. And like starving, desperate pigs, they will eat anything that they are dished without question or inquiry. So to this here in context to consider, if people are going to say it right, you need to know the difference. And it needs to be dedicated to the intelligence of the true core essence in direct connection to the higher force that is creator source. The higher self is not some disincarnate entity or anything to do with some kind of holy guardian angel. That kind of teaching has led individuals into a feedback loop to be fed upon by spirits through things that most still cannot even fucking comprehend. And if that were not the case here in context, then the lives of individuals in this world would not be the way that they are. And true to where I'm taking things in this segment, it is to address that burning flame within the depths of who you really are and will put you into alignment with the higher force. A knowing that simply is. And when you are truly connected to it, it will urge you to move forward into a more noble way of life and into a more powerful state of mind and existence. This calling more often than not is going to present itself in your darkest moments. Again, as I was pulled into the realms of complete and total fucking madness myself before I was able to realize what was really going on and did come into making connection with the higher force. It is this pull that you will feel which will inevitably take you into the darkness of your ignorance, whether you want to go there or not. And everything that you have ignored to the unconscious, subconscious encryption will be standing there in the face of your potential destiny. And it's when the core is going to scream the loudest from within you. And it's going to happen when you are struck by the cosmic hammer upon the anvil of your mind. And it's here that we seem to have but two choices before us. Work hard and strive to live in a superior manner, or continue down a dead-end path making decisions that manipulate your thoughts, will, and action towards everything that will only lead to more frustration and misery in this existence for yourself and everyone else around you. And while the apparition of the core essence may supply us with temporary inspiration, individuals rarely adhere to what it empowers and what it is working to encourage from within us. And because most can't even hear the call from within themselves due to the fact that they do not have an ear to hear, it becomes very hard for those of us that know the difference trying to share these things with people. Individuals live lives of habituation, in denial, willful ignorance, and allow apathy, cynicism, and self-sabotage to rule their existence. Many do not heed the call of any sort of higher awareness because they know deep down answering such a call would be very difficult and will force them to change. And will, even to my own experience, literally fucking destroy the idea of who they have been conditioned to be and will force them to face their true spirit to soul code essence. And to recap on my segment via ancient mythos, Odin, Vandaganda, and the Ulfidnar, something that Nietzsche said in Human, All Too Human needs to be overstated if individuals are going to truly wake the fuck up. And it's this, quote, they fear the higher self. And to this in context, I'm speaking about the true core essence again, okay? They fear the higher self. Because when it speaks demandingly. They desire the fruits of success, confidence, and courage, which accompany self-evolution, but they are unwilling to undergo the discipline and pain needed to attain these fruits. And see, what most individuals lack in life to the current human condition is purpose and ambition. And so you might say to yourself, that's not fucking true. People are doing things every single day, Sethikus. But see, I'm not talking about what is common. And all of us, to those that actually care, we have an uncommon, unique purpose to this existence to unfold. Now, it's not to say that we don't do things that are common every single day. But what I'm getting at here is true purpose into what the North Star of the occult reveals to the individual. And having the drive and ambition to fucking go for it. See, without kindling that sacred fire within yourself on a consistent basis, few are going to be willing to undergo or could take on the Herculean task of effecting positive self-change and self-actualization towards purpose and ambition, which are two of the most primal and sacred fundamentals of our being. And to feel ambition and purpose rise within you and how you ultimately act to what you know within your core, even without fully understanding how, why, when, or where, it forces us to embrace the unique calling of the spirit to soul code essence and work our asses off to create it. It's not going to be handed to you. You have to create it. We incarnated to be co-creators with the higher force and potentially one another. And to not act on that purpose and ambition is to turn our backs on ourselves and betray ourselves and the true reason of our existence. If you betray yourself here, it will lock you into a prison of shame and guilt and rule you on an unconscious, subconscious level in denial. And until the darkness of ignorance is made conscious and overcome through fire and trial, you will never be free, no matter what the fuck you think you know about anything. It's also to note that a lack of ambition and coming into true purpose is not the only thing that is holding us back. Most put on the air of being done to waste their life, but continue to drown in sorrows and bad habits, and are for the most part not willing to break the chains imposed upon themselves no matter what they say they want, and continue to blame their circumstances in life, the state of the world, or whatever excuses they make for themselves. This is the major danger here, and it's the reason why they are indifferent, disassociated, and still hold on to a very strong victim mentality. Times arise when you will deeply desire nothing than the opportunity to put in all of the hard work and discipline that is needed to live in a superior manner. Yet for some reason, most don't make any real progress. And see, the question to that is why? Why the fuck is that? And this is why the rooting in context to the real initiation needs to happen. So you need to understand that this path work is more than some kind of supernatural experience. And to truly know thyself is to know the unique system mechanics of your own psyche and your own psychology. And if you don't know this, you can bet your ass that it is being used against you on a daily fucking basis. And it is during these times of indifference to this that you will experience that pull from the core essence, forcing you to root even deeper. Listen to me. The difference here is that most still make the decision to remain conditioned and to go towards that pull they feel from the lower encryptions in the face of that which is beyond, and allow their trauma and programming to oppose any attempts to take any steps forward. With this, you must realize that inner opposition resistance is the greatest enemy that we will ever face. See, this is what the fuck they count on. And it's also what the dark ones exploit. And resistance in context to the true core essence is the most foolish decision and toxic energy we would ever ultimately set ourselves in alliance with. And to yield resistance to this is going to deform your spirit. It will stunt you and will ultimately fucking destroy you, let alone make you much less than who you really are. Question: who are you actually creating yourself to be? Now see, ponder this for a second. Who are you actually creating yourself to be? As powerful as our soul's call is to realization, so potent are the forces of resistance arrayed against it. It is the set of psycho-behavioral patterns and habits which inhibit individuals from heeding the call, your list of excuses, your rationalizations against what is there, fear, laziness, depression, anxiety, procrastination, and the tendency to self-medicate to the point of compulsion into escapism. These are all manifestations of this kind of resistance in context, which opposes any movement from the lower state of being into the higher. And unless we learn to overcome a life of mediocrity, that will be your destiny, no matter what kind of pipe dream bullshit people think or talk about. Resistance here to its main objective is not to simply wound or disable the individual. This kind of resistance we experience is that which sets its aim to completely annihilate and utterly destroy and murder the individual from the inside out. Its target is the epicenter of our being. It's our genius. It's our spirit to soul code essence, which again is the unique and priceless gift we are put onto this earth to integrate and unfold in creation. And when we fight against it, we are in a war unto death. Now, to all of you listening, I hope you have a personal copy of Sun Tzu, The Art of War. It's also in the Black Earth Library for members of our school. And it's to note again that we are still in a war on consciousness. And while the primary intention of the text was to provide leaders of the warrior class with insight on how to subdue their enemies, it profoundly lays into the facts of this, which offer timeless wisdom on how to deal with any form of conflict and any type of enemy, including your greatest enemy, which is yourself against yourself, and is what the dark ones will amplify and exploit if you do not work to integrate and master yourself from within yourself. Thus, for advice on how to overcome resistance here in context to the denial of our true birthright, you must realize that there is a trade-off going on here. And it's your true core essence being traded off, given over to the enemy, as within, as without. And it is to quote Sun Tzu again, with this as I have many times before here on Black Earth Productions. If you know thy enemy and know thyself, in 100 battles, no danger. If you know yourself and not the enemy, one victory for one loss. If you neither know thy enemy or know thyself, in every battle certain defeat. And as this text is instructing us, it is ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, to overcome self-sabotage. We must not ignore or pretend it does not exist, and to study the typical traits it displays to fortify ourselves against it. Whenever we use excuses to justify our slavish way of thinking or being in life, or allow apathy to rule our days, we are engaging in tendencies that are universal here in context and shared by all. See, even the most successful among us actually fucking deal with this shit. I deal with this fucking shit. And unfortunately right now, it is still impossible to completely eradicate this form of resistance once and for all. We must see it as a part of the human condition that needs to be overcome on a consistent basis and learn how to move forward in spite of its presence here in our reality field. The reason this is so hard to combat is present to the fact that it is so goddamn pervasive with too many here on Earth, and is to its cruelty towards nature. It assumes many forms and changes so often that most of the time we are unaware of the types of ways it is opposing us. A particular pernicious form that this kind of resistance takes is the projecting of this internal resistance into the reality field. Doing so will forever enslave individuals to the victim's state of mind, whether they realize it or not, and will be the cause point for the individual to be blaming everything else except themselves. See, we all need to be held accountable here, all of us, and to sit there and whine and blame the state of the world as the reason to not make it better is absolute fucking bullshit. Now, in context to the mythos, people get into even blaming the fates for what's been woven. And see, this is why the Norns weep, because of the stupidity of humanity. Seeing the potential of what is beyond this shit, they fucking weep. And the mediocre intentions and results individuals are experiencing to their misery in life is why. Because it is a waste. And you need to realize that projection in denial is one of the most damaging things that anyone can do. It not only prevents the individual from taking personal responsibility for their existence, but it will also destroy the healthy relationships in your life, especially people that are closest to you. And it is to say that you are not to tolerate any of that kind of shit from anyone around you. If someone is projecting, you need to hold them accountable. And if they start gnashing their teeth and spitting and fucking clawing and all that shit, you stand your fucking ground. And don't allow yourself to get triggered out to the point where you start projecting, because if that happens, and you more often than not are going to be able to feel the energy of what I'm saying here, if you have spiritual discernment, you are making yourself into a fucking feeding trough for the dark ones themselves. It will destroy the healthy relationships in your life, especially people that are closest to you. That is why I don't have sympathy for those that cannot leg the fuck up. And taken even deeper into the relationship that you have with yourself, you will find yourself wounded, jaded, isolated, and ineffective to anything if you do not take full responsibility for your existence. This is a call to the spiritually mature. And see, in order to combat this tendency, which will work to suck you into a black hole of hopelessness and despair, realize that resistance here in context arises from within the shadow. It is self-generated and self-perpetuated, and is what takes over the ego, which is the will force. Again, I'm not a teacher that dispenses with ego. It is the non-integrated shadow, which is the real issue here. And while projection is also being driven by a hardcore defeatist state of mind, its most insidious and most powerful manifestation comes in the form of fear. Now, fear in response to something potentially harmful is a natural and healthy response. That more often than not is going to take on the energy of courage. But here in context, we do not only transmute fear of that which poses a threat to us. It's to realize that people actually fear that which is our highest good. We fear our highest possibilities. We are generally afraid to become that which we glimpse in our most perfect moments, under the most perfect conditions, under the conditions of great courage. This highest good is also something that we have been conditioned to fear, that which is our true calling. And to live in service to such a calling is to center our lives around productive work that we find challenging and intriguing, as it will set itself against the grain of this fucked up world. And the more scared individuals are of this work, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. You have to do it, because that call is not going to go the fuck away. And the longer you ignore it, the more chaotic and insane your existence will be. With this knowledge, we can utilize our fears and let it guide us towards the direction of our highest abilities and courage. And it's to note that what you fear here in context is an indication of what you are actually seeking, but still do not understand what or why you seek it. But once you have pinpointed the form of productive work that is suitable to you, there is only one thing to do. Start taking action every single day for the sake of centering your life around the true call. And know that resistance is going to be there every step of the way, much like the sirens of Odysseus, who will work to lure us away from our life mission in potentially ultra-seductive and enchanting ways. But just like Odysseus was able to overcome the sirens by having his crew stick wax in their ears, and by tying himself to the mast of his ship, it became possible to overcome the lure of resistance on their point of quest and navigation. It is a major lesson we need to take and master if we are going to actualize who we really are. And the importance of doing so cannot be overstated. I have been driving this for fucking years and will continue to drive it the rest of my life. And for the ability to master resistance day in and day out, this is what differentiates those that have turned professional in their chosen respective fields versus those who are forever doomed to remain nothing but amateurs and tourists, jumping from one thing to another, one thing to another. And see, turning professional in any field is ultimately a decision. And know that you're going to be fucking tested. And most never succeed because of what I'm getting into with this segment. And in context to the initiation, you will need at least 20 years to get to a certain level before you actually realize what the fuck is really going on. And I'm talking about the occult here. You're not going to get this shit in one segment or one run through with anything. It takes years. It will take your life. And it's a decision to which we must recommit to every single day. Because I've witnessed time and time again, people starting out on the path, but then falling to the wayside. And the reason they fall to the wayside is because of what I'm getting at with all of this. See, each day the professional understands. He will wake up facing the same demons, the same resistance, and the same self-sabotage bullshit. The difference is that he will not yield to it. He will have mastered them and will continue to master them. So you need to realize that the chief problem with everything is that humans actually fucking need a certain level of challenge and external stimulus and need purpose to stop them from sinking into the blank stare and the consciousness of the idiot. And it is to remind you of the wizard's first rule, quote, "People are stupid, and given proper motivation, almost anyone will believe almost anything. And because people are stupid, they will believe a lie because they want it to be true or because they are afraid it might be true. People's heads are full of knowledge, facts, and beliefs, and most of it is false. Yet they think it's all true. People are stupid. They can only rarely tell the difference between a lie and the truth, and yet they are confident they can, and so are all the easier to fool." Again, taken from Terry Goodkind's Sword of Truth Chronicles. And in context here to the lies of resistance setting themselves against the true core intelligence. This is what most humans have been conditioned to believe is true. And see, it's also to note here in this segment is some things I want to touch upon. That for most of the history of mankind, leisure was a rare luxury. Toiling from dawn to dusk to survive has been and still is the lot of most men, women, and children. To this, what I'm going to touch upon is the leisure revolution, which sprang forth from the Second Industrial Revolution and the rapid intensification of labor that went along with it. Not only did people run into cities in search for work, but it took them away from nature and enslaved them into scheduled free time for leisure activities. And people had the opportunity to transcend survival. But with this, even if someone reaches this level, a question still arises. What have we actually freed ourselves for? In other words, how are you going to use the time you have that is not dedicated solely to the necessities of life? See, if you actually contemplate this question, if you had everything that you need to survive and live a healthy life, what the fuck would you actually do with your time otherwise? See, most people think that any free time that they would have would be for resting, relaxation, passively consuming, or whatever. And as a result, such lives assume a common mold. Most people in the most ordinary sense are very limited. They pass their time day after day with mindless pursuits, such as games, television, or they fill their hours speaking mostly about nothing of real significance, of their comings and goings, of who's doing what, and gossip, and bullshit, even still to what is obvious with the weather and all the things forgotten just as fast as they were mentioned. They have no real aspiration or purpose for themselves other than getting through the day, to crack open a cold one after work, do it all again the next day like fucking drones. And literally for their entire fucking lives to this. They walk across the stage of life leaving everything the same, or nowadays even worse than when they entered. Achieving nothing, aspiring to nothing, and never having a profound or original thought whatsoever. And see, this is what is unfortunately too common and usual. It's typical and indeed normal to the cultivation of the status quo. With that, we're going to take a break now. And when I return, I will continue this dissertation. Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions. I'll be right back after the break. back now from the break. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame, Healing Arts, Cult Science. And as I've been diving deep into mastering navigation with the arts and science of psychology, I am now going to continue diving even deeper. All of you that have the ear to hear what I am saying in this segment, to the cultivation of the status quo. Relatively few only ever rise out of such a bullshit existence into a place of true, actualized superiority. And see, some might even argue that there is nothing wrong with the status quo existence. This, though, comes from individuals that are bent on maintaining their slavery because they are truly cowards. Granted, modern life is fast-paced and often stressful, and with mental health problems on the rise to everything. The reason for this comes from the avoidance of truth. It is justified that there is nothing wrong with living the status quo, when in fact is one of the main cause points to why shit is fucked up in this world. And to this, what people think they need is more time resting, when we need to take our time and start kicking even more ass in life and not be pulled into all of the distractions so that we can justify a bullshit existence of slavery. And it's to say this, that too much inactivity and stagnation is the breeding ground for chaos and unhappiness and a plethora of psychological problems in life. It's to note that you are going to struggle with bouts of depression and maybe fall into the idea that all is vanity. And see, why the fuck do we allow ourselves to fall into this shit? Realize the cause and effect here. Depression is preceded by long bouts of extreme passivity, inactivity, and when you do not occupy your days with interesting tasks, challenges, and problems to solve in order to be better, you will discover very fast that you will be hit with waves of depression, anxiety, and boredom, which are going to fog your perceptions and will be the cause point of becoming a pessimist. And it is to note here that the idle mind is truly the devil's workshop. Boredom, passivity, and stagnation, these are the beginning of mental illness, which propagates itself like scum of a stagnant pond. And it's to note that passivity and mental illness go hand in hand. You can waste your leisure time with idle pursuits and leave your untapped potentials untouched and render yourself prone to mental illness, or you can strive to spend your time creating things, exploring, learning, doing, challenging your capacities, improving your talents. And while the latter option entails perseverance, struggle, and the sacrifice of short-term pleasures and comfort, the payoff is mental health and personal growth into purpose, which is worth the effort. The mentally healthy individual is he who habitually calls upon fairly deep levels of vital reserves within the core essence. An individual whose mind is allowed to become dormant so that only the surface is disturbed. They begin to suffer from circulation problems in context to energy. See, neurosis is the feeling of being cut off from your own powers. What though if the connection between passivity and depression is not applicable to all here in context? See, I'm not a teacher that says to deny anything you are ever feeling. No, in fact, you need to feel everything because it's there for a fucking reason. But you need to further realize why it's there, and you must know thyself and come to know what it is working to teach you about yourself. So far, I've shared some of the answers to this, but only a minority who possess a very strong creative urge are going to actually hear what the fuck I have to say. It's to note that the struggle to create exists so that one will eventually take pride in themselves, to have that authentic and justified self-respect and honor and dignity. And while many people claim to have self-respect, more often than not, it's not to honor or to a healthy sense of pride. It is unto malignant narcissism and an arrogant shield to protect their underlying insecurity and self-sabotage once things are actually confronted. And to truly be proud and confident, one must have the kind of honor and self-respect that is justified in alignment, and must cultivate extraordinary skill in a specific domain. Now, when it comes to cosmic law, this is for everyone, despite whatever the fuck you are doing in life. No one, not even the gods and goddesses themselves, can get away from cosmic law. And thus, to attain personal excellence of this kind that sets you apart from others, you have to know this first before you can really start to learn how to actually know thyself. I've explained this over and over and over again here on Black Earth Productions to the foundation of initiation. And see, listen, I'm going to speak about what it actually means to be a superior individual. And the idea that some people are superior to others would offend the modern taste to the idea that we are all equal. Like young athletes that get a participation trophy even if they got their asses handed to them. And see, that's fucking bullshit. There are winners in this world and there are losers. And the fact remains to the truth that equality will forever only serve the mundane existence. And see, many have confused the idea of equal rights with equal worth. Just because every individual has natural rights and needs to be treated equally in context to cosmic law, it does not mean that every individual possesses the same worth, or drive, or passion, or purpose. And for anyone that really knows the difference, this is self-evident. You could recognize that the potential for greatness is there, but you have to take it within yourself and actualize. Another reason we face this as humans is the fact that most dedicate their lives into fitting in with the herd. And again, seems to be only a relative few that dedicate and cultivate an uncommon purpose and produce a work of exceptional value and worth and proceed upon a path in pursuit of personal greatness, irrespective of the applause or the approval of the bullshit opinions of those that have not actualized whatsoever. And it's to note here that such individuals that do rise up out of the swamp of chaos are the superior ones. True confidence, dignity, and honor in a manner that is not based on false pretense and the freedom to direct our own activities, rather than reflexively reaching for all of the bullshit distractions and engaging in passive activities, socializing about superficial subjects. To ask yourself, is it worth the cost of your mental health and potential destiny? And even if our time spent on such things does not necessarily plant the seeds of stagnation and depression, it is most certainly decreasing your worth being human and minimizing your chances for being able to achieve the self-respect and honor that will give you a healthy sense of pride in yourself. Some people, no doubt, seem to be born and destined to be common. To live out a life with no significant purpose is to waste your life and your talents and your gifts. See, most people have the power to be creative, and some have the creative capacity in a godlike degree. But many people, perhaps even most, are content with passing pleasures and satisfactions of the base state of mind. Indeed, many people will account their lives to being successful if they get through them with only limited pain, day in and day out, especially in order to give the general approval of those around them. And to this, notwithstanding, merely do what others have done in order to be safe and comfortable, but to do something that is truly original, whether it is appreciated by others or not. That is what being human is really all about in context here. And it alone is what justifies the true sense of self-respect, dignity, and honor that will lead to a healthy sense of pride. In truth, the masses of individuals live in a sort of quiet desperation, and is an observation that still rings true today. And I can see that shit in people's eyes when I'm in public. It's this desperation which comes from that nagging feeling from the core essence that you don't understand, into the fact that you are wasting your fucking life, accompanied by the frustration that despite the desire to make something of ourselves, the years pass by and nothing seems to change. Those in this predicament feel the thing that they ought to be and seeing the world how it should be, beating underneath the thing that they actually are. And if you ignore these feelings for too long, then you will forever remain haunted by what may have been. You need to break free from this place of quiet desperation and transform yourself in a manner that is more conducive to a fulfilled life and a more powerful existence. And it is to note that we cannot change anything unless we accept it. You must accept the world as it truly is, not what you want it to be, in denial of how fucked you are if things are never going to change. The first step, therefore, is to acknowledge that a change in our way of thinking is needed. An easy way to determine that our lives need to change is to note how often you are afflicted by feelings of shame, guilt, regret, anxiety. Again, it's not to deny these feelings, but to go into them fully and realize why they are there. Neurotic symptoms such as these are a direct result to an inadequate approach to life and act as signals communicating the necessity of change. And according to Carl Jung, neurotic suffering may consist in their compelling the individual to come to terms with the foundation of his being and with the world, and thereby gain a better knowledge of his limits and possibilities. Jung thus puts the emphasis on the perspective aspect, giving neurosis a positive meaning and not regarding it only as burdensome or some kind of mental illness. It can even act as a stimulus in the struggle for the development of the personality and be paradoxically a curvature factor in context to the way of individuation. And unless you catch it and transmute up and out from within yourself, then yes, you will be devoured by it and eventually completely destroyed. And when troubled by these states of emotional flux, most people choose to take the easy road instead of changing their behaviors, and they try to dull their feelings or flee from them if possible, giving themselves over to compulsion with hardcore addiction to bullshit stimulus and escapism, which breaches the walls of self-control and reasonable indulgence. Because listen, it is okay to enjoy your fucking life. But again, when it breaches the walls of self-control, you are falling into compulsion. You are a fucking slave to fear because you don't want to deal with whatever the fuck you're feeling. You don't want to deal with that responsibility of having to rise the fuck up and actually making something of yourself in this fucking world that's going to be a mark of greatness. And in the long run, this will forever only exacerbate the problem. You may think that there's a safe road, but that would be the road of death. Because there, nothing happens anymore. Anyone who takes the safe road is as good as fucking dead. It's only after accepting the change as needed, knowing that it is necessary. The question then becomes, what type of change is conducive to a fulfilled life? The first thing I would say is that you need to learn what the fuck is really going on here on Earth and how the world and universe actually fucking work. All right, that's going to be your first step. And to that first step, instead of study with just the mentally ill here in context to a lot of things that we've already gotten into, we need to explore another way of looking into things and choose to make study of those who have actually excelled in life, which is going to lead you to very important discoveries. See, the healthiest of those among us are motivated by trends of self-actualization, which is an ongoing actualization of potentials, capacities, and talents, and the fulfillment of a mission. And as a fuller knowledge of acceptance of the person's own intrinsic nature in connection to the true core essence. If you plan on being anything less than what you are capable of actually being, you are going to be unhappy in life for the duration of your existence. And after years of stagnating, and you have allowed all of the excuses to rule you, how is it that an individual becomes self-actualized? Now, see, to that, here's some things to consider. To the fact that you need to wake the fuck up. Everything in practice here all goes back to the first cosmic law. It is all about your state of mind. If you sow a thought, you are going to reap an action. If you sow an action, you are going to reap a habit. If you sow a habit, you are going to reap a character. If you sow a character, you are going to reap a destiny. And the first step will forever be the thought, which is Thoth. When the Thothians betrayed the wisdom councils, this is when mankind fell. I'm taking it back hundreds and hundreds of thousands of fucking years here. I'm not going to get into the details of what manifested in context to that, but you need to realize what the word Thoth actually means. Thoth means thought. And when thought betrays wisdom, that is when you become a slave. And those that have been struggling to live more fulfilling lives in alignment with truth do so because they have taken time to master the first cosmic law. Now, ultimately, all of this is going to take you into the selection of an aim or purpose to your existence. But without mastering cosmic law, you are doomed to fail. Realize that self-actualized individuals are going to be defined by a life mission. And more often than not, our passions end up preceding the preparation of first having to master the skills it takes to fulfill the mission. So you got to understand that there is protocol to everything. There is training to everything. An initiation that needs to take place with all of this. No matter what you end up doing in life, but for those that seek to be great, without knowing how things actually work, you will never be able to tap into the true potential and true magic that is there within you to unfold and work into the world, making things better for yourselves and inspiring that with those around you. Therefore, if you are uncertain in where your passions are, realize that you're not going to discover them by thought alone. And rather than delaying for too long, it is far better to choose something challenging that sparks interest. And don't worry if it's necessarily the perfect choice. The sowing of the thought or the selection of a goal will only be a positive consequence if we reap the actions and cultivate better habits, which ultimately move us forward in the pursuit of our aims. And having something to aim at is very important. Not so much because of the external rewards or what the achievement of the goal will bring, but rather because of the transformation it forces us to undertake within ourselves. And by pursuing a challenging goal that requires us to leave our comfort zone and develop a new skill, in the process, you will discover for yourself that you are not as helpless as you once thought. Do not allow thought to betray proper knowledge and wisdom. That's the real secret in context to the Thothians. The problem for too many with this, though, is that individuals struggle reaping the right actions to the will force. Too often, people blame their inability to take action on their stagnation, on their anxiety, on their depression, on their fear, or tend to cling to a lack of confidence in their abilities as an excuse for not cultivating them. And before taking the actions necessary to pursue their aims, such people reason the idea that they must first rid themselves of their negative emotions. But those that take this approach are doomed to fail every single fucking time. Negative emotional states are the result of faulty behavior patterns and the avoidance of actually facing fear in the eye and courageously taking on the challenges in our lives that will lead to personal growth. And it is to highly note here also that meditation and introspection alone will never cure any of us of these feelings. Rather, we must know that we can take purposeful action even if you're feeling anxious, depressed, or fearful. The importance of a purposeful action is the cure for our troubled emotion. And when you start to realign your life towards getting done what reality sends that needs doing, with this, I'm going to advise you to focus more on purposeful behavior in action and let the feelings otherwise take care of themselves. And focus. Focus on the core essence. Focus on the higher force. If you do this, you will find that when you get good at what needs to be done in your life, the feelings you are dealing with are going to stop giving you so much trouble. And even if your feelings become troublesome, you can know the difference and why they are there. And when you are involved in constructive activity, they will remain in perspective. And the feeling ceases to be the whole show of everything or anything that is ruling you. The ability to act when you are not feeling up to the task is the mark of character of an individual that is self-actualized. And perhaps the most valuable results to any true education is to make yourself do the thing you have to do when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. Self-actualizing does not mean a transcendence of human problems. It is to realize this, that conflict, anxiety, frustration, sadness, hurt, and guilt can all be found in healthy humans. It doesn't matter who you are or what stage of life you are at. These things are always going to present themselves. And the question here is, do you have the courage to act in the face of these feelings or not? It is also to note here with men specifically. Again, like I've said, a man that allows emotion to rule him is not in the position to lead. And emotion, gentlemen, is where we get our fucking magic. So it is to stir up focus within the fulcrum. And if you don't know what it is like to experience that raw power yet, if you focus past all of the bullshit, you will experience the raw power of the higher force. If you do this in practice, you will inevitably make connection with it. Those that have been initiated, if you do this for fucking real, I've gotten reports from other students saying that when they did this, they made that connection and it blew their fucking minds out the back of their heads. You think I'm fucking around with anything I'm saying over here? No, I'm not. And those that find such courage will live far better lives than those that cower in the face of their fears. And it is to state, if you do the thing you fear, then the death of fear is certain. Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions. I'll be right back after the break. if you do the thing you fear, then the death of fear is certain. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, giving it to you raw and motherfucking real. All of you are going to want to check out the Black Earth Productions website at blackearthproductionsaz.com and click on the services page for the Blue Flame, Healing Arts, and Occult Science. Those that want to know their own psychology, those that want to know how to navigate and heal and tap into that true raw power that will connect you to the higher force. Those that want to line out initiation into the occult, send me an email at blackearthproductions with an S at hotmail.com. Now to move further into the segment. Something else to consider here as an effective way to activate this state of mind is to reflect on the imminence of physical death. Literally reflect upon the imminence of this. And see, when you do this, don't go into fear with it, go into observation. Those that become more aware of just how brief life is, realize that it's not to the fear of death. It's to realize that even death cannot destroy the human spirit. So you may as well actualize this from within yourself fully. And to those that do, we live in the most intense and passionate and courageous way possible, working to take advantage of each moment. And if you do, all the things that stand in the way of integration will fall away, staring death in the eyes, leaving what is truly important. And remembering that you're most likely going to physically die. That is until a specific generation reaches full activation of the original codex. In the meantime, we need to stare death in the eyes. And trust me, it's the best way to avoid the trap of thinking that you have something to lose here. Because you are already naked and you are already vulnerable. And there is no reason not to follow your heart and true intelligence. Death, though, here is a double-edged sword. If you wait too long to cultivate the changes, to live a more fulfilled life, you are already twice dead. And instead of striving towards our self-actualized potential, wasting your time on stagnation. It is here that awareness of our mortality will give rise to that nagging, intense feeling of shame, guilt, and regret. And again, if you choose the safe road, that is the road of death. Twice dead. And you will spend your remaining days fleeing from the fact that you wasted your fucking life. And it's to note that any obstruction of the natural process of development into being self-actualized or getting stuck on any level unsuited to one's age, it's going to take its revenge on you. If not immediately, then later on the onset of the second half of life in the form of a serious mental crisis, multiple nervous breakdowns, and will be accompanied by all manner of physical and psychic sufferings, by tormenting pangs of conscience, often not understood to those that did not actualize their potential. And see, even then, if it's not faced, the individual is helpless. They may not have done anything to harm anyone per se, but they have indefinitely harmed themselves and are plagued by uncertainty, discontent, despair, and above all else, anxiety. And working to wake anyone the fuck up that has reached this level in their lives is damn near fucking impossible, because the encryption is far too thick and there is a point of no return. So you got to take the opportunity. You got to take the opportunity now to recognize that this is your life, that this is a gift, not to be squandered, not to be taken for granted. And if you negate this, you will come into the places and the stages of that constant, indefinable anxiety. Guilt does not lay in the fact that the individual is dealing with neurosis, but in the fact that knowing he is becoming that and does nothing to set course for themselves to cure it. Again, This is the pathwork of wolves and dragons, not sheep and slaves. This is a lot of what it is actually going to take to become sovereign and to become the master of your existence. This is our fucking birthright as humans here on Earth, and is our rights unto existence. Stop living by powers you only pretend to understand. Out of all of the powers that shape life, our emotions stand out, both in their ability to dramatically influence our well-being in the mysterious ways that they do. See, it's your emotion that is going to stand out more than anything else. And emotion, again, is where we get our magic. If you get caught into the grip of strong emotion, we often lose the ability to distinguish between rational and irrational, and in extreme cases, between the real and the manipulated imagination. Emotions can drive us to do things that most would feel that they are completely incapable of doing. That is how powerful emotion is. Sometimes for good, but more often than not, for ill. And of all the emotions, anger stands out as one of the most powerful and certainly one of the most destructive. Rage, resentment, chronic hostility, and blind hatred are all forms of anger which, if allowed to persist, can result in intense personal suffering, harm to those close to us, and even death on a mass scale. Trillions of people throughout the true occult history of the world have died at the hands of tyrants, which feed off the resentment of the masses. And it's a fact that should wake us up to the peril of ignoring your anger. You need to realize that not all anger is pathological and destructive. In fact, anger is going to be a launching pad into a full-on awakened state of mind. To this, anger is a warranted response to mistreatment. And even rage can be to our benefit if our lives are in peril. And just like Aristotle said, quote, "Those that do not show anger at the things that ought to arouse anger are to be regarded as fools." See, anger can provide the energy of self-assertiveness required to transform ourselves, attain our goals, and engage in constructive activity. Anger is a sign that something within us wants to live and affirm itself. And while its antithesis, apathy, signifies that a will to death has overcome us. The problem that we all face is how to harness the constructive side of anger while avoiding its destructive tendencies, unless warranted. One of the main goals of this entire segment is to see how we can do this. And to do so, we must examine the connection between powerlessness and anger. Indeed, no social emotion is so widespread today than the conviction of powerlessness, the sense of being beset and persecuted. See, we all know the statement when people say that absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? But it's also to note that absolute impotence corrupts absolutely. And that is what we have going on in the world today. That is one of the cause points to the master-slave paradigm, in which all are slaves to ignorance. When you feel like your life counts for little, when your apathy leads you into a place of stagnation, in a form of work which only produces a paycheck and emptiness in the soul, when we are surrounded by corrupt governments and corrupt corporations whose supposed power far exceeds anything which we are capable, it will forever rule your existence on an unconscious, subconscious level, keeping you from your true power and your true purpose until you come into a place of being actualized to the ambition that we need to set ourselves upon here. And when we find ourselves lost in a sea of faceless others we cannot connect with or impact or reach out to, impotence and then anger and rage are going to be the results. Our particular problem at this point in history is the widespread loss of the sense of individual significance, a loss which is sensed inwardly as impotence. So many people feel that they do not and cannot have power, that even self-affirmation is denied them, that they have nothing left to assert, and hence there is no solution short of a violent explosion. But in addition to societal forces and the existential burdens we all face, at birth we are thrown into a reality that is for the most part unwelcoming, frustrating, and hostile to our desires. The helplessness we feel in the face of the cold indifference of reality is worsened by the fact that though we do our best to desperately deny it, deep down we know that our primal desire to perpetuate ourselves is doomed to fail, and that death lies waiting for us all. So do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Despite anger being a natural and sometimes healthy response to feelings of powerlessness, most people have been culturally conditioned to suppress their anger. Devised social rituals to this hearing context only maintain an altruistic self-image behind which we hide the anger and resentment that dwells within us. And in so doing, we have made ourselves psychologically unstable, weak, and prone to psychosomatic disorders and storms of rage, which can arise from our unconscious mind field seemingly unprovoked. We must find a constructive way of dealing with the presence of anger and need to develop outlets for catharsis. And to do this, we need to turn to the concept of the daimonic. The daimonic is a term used to refer to a power which came upon mankind between gods and humans. The daimonic is any natural function which has the power to take over the entire person, be it sex, love, anger, rage, the desire for power, are all daimonic passions, and have the power to possess us and override our conscious faculties. They are powerful instinctive drives that push towards their fulfillment and hence potentially enliven the individual, or, on the other extreme, inevitably harm us. And while the benefits of the daimonic passions, such as sex and love, are obvious, as a result of cultural conditioning, most people are unaware of the constructive side of anger. And to this, our culture requires that we repress most of our anger, and therefore, by doing so, are repressing most of our creativity. The need to be creative is not limited to artists or certain personality types. Rather, the necessity to be creative is called forth within us all. Whenever inner or outer conflicts from chaos manifest in our lives, the presence of conflict and chaos signifies the need for a major shift in our worldview and change in your character, and thus the environments we choose to live in as well. See, when we are creative, rather than responding to chaos and conflict with passivity and powerlessness, we react in a proactive manner by transforming our mind, by giving form to some components in the external world to help us make sense of the chaos and ultimately transcend it. The creative process is a process of change. It's a process of development. It's a process of evolution and the organization of subjective life, given the role of creativity in transforming chaos and conflict into order and form, and feelings of powerlessness into power. The lack of any sufficient creative outlet in our lives is a prime culprit for many of our personal problems. But just like Picasso stated, quote, "Every act of creation is first an act of destruction." And whether we are creating a more powerful state of mind or something of extreme worth in the external world, we first need to clear away the old and obsolete in order to make way for the new. You must want to burn yourself up in your own flame. How do you wish to become new unless you have first become ashes? To help us engage in this creative destruction, the courage and assertiveness and energy which accompanies anger can prove to be indispensable. And while most are conditioned to be in denial of the anger within them, Many great thinkers and artists and magicians throughout the ages have emphasized the necessity of tapping into and utilizing this daimonic passion as a stimulus for creativity and self-transformation. Creating and actualizing one's possibilities always involves a destructive as well as constructive aspect. It always involves destroying the status quo, destroying old patterns within oneself, progressively destroying what one has clung on to from childhood onwards, and creating new and original forms and ways of living. Every experience of creativity has its potentiality of aggression or denial towards other persons in one's environment or towards established patterns within oneself. And given that anger is a natural response to feelings of powerlessness, again, the suppression of anger is highly, highly fucking dangerous. We need to acknowledge our anger and not allow it to unconsciously wreak havoc in our lives and the world around us. If we can become more aware and accepting of the anger within, we can use it to invigorate us and propel us creatively towards distant goals and transform us into more self-assertive and decisive individuals. But if you continue to conform to the cultural condition and ignore or suppress its presence, anger will eventually transform a daimotic passion into a demonic power. You need to get away from denying the shadow. The shadow is an aspect of who you are, your true passions, which are hidden deep down, buried and suppressed. There is a difference between daimotic power and demonic power. It's the daimotic passions, which are akin to that pure, raw, infallible consciousness that we all have potential to tap into here. But again, if you continue to conform to the cultural condition and ignore and suppress its presence, you will be feasted upon by fucking demons. So to learn creatively how to live our lives by tapping into the daimonic is one of the major goals here. Or, again, you will be violently devoured by it in one way or one form than another. And as we are in the position to decide what our destiny is going to be, let us choose wisely. Take heed, my brothers and sisters. Take heed to the things that I have encrypted with this segment. Now, to wrap things up here, to promote the blue flame, healing arts, and occult science, if you are interested to know how to navigate consciousness on this level, I'm going to encourage the full pack initiation to lay the proper foundation for path work into the occult in context to the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms. The art and science of psychology is something that we as humans are still learning more and more every single fucking day. But I'm going to encourage you to get away from any of the mainstream concepts in context to this art and science that take you away from learning how to know thyself, that take you away from the trajectory of learning how to discover what your true destiny is here. Because with all of these arts and sciences, not only does it peel back the veils and show you what the fuck is really going on here in our reality field and how things actually fucking work, but it shows us how to navigate. It shows us how to master navigation. First on the solar spiral of creation, on into the galactic, and potentially the universal spiral that humanity still has yet to even come close into trajectory with. A lot more is going to be unfolding going into 2025 and 2028. But this is the window of opportunity. The time is now, and people need to get on this shit. So if anyone listening is taking the idea of initiation into the occult seriously, check out our services page on the website at blackearthproductions.com and send me an email at blackearthproductions@hotmail.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from more of you. I got a lot more in the works. All of you that are doing this for real and that are keeping me up with your progression, continue to kick ass and continue working to come into alignment and let other people know what the fuck is really going on here. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions. Be empowered, be encouraged.